On the other end of the appearance spectrum, we just went from Christina Bobb and Melissa Crony, people who have a big fan base for their particular physical outward appearance. On the other hand, um, we have a man who, if you just look at him, you go, you know what? Fighting a subpoena agrees with him.
Not receive the score from the Congressional Budget Office. Most importantly, and this is a bill, it's really three and a half.
Oh, by the way, they have gotten the score. It contributes about 357, 380, depending, or $112 billion to the deficit from direct action. Of course, the investment in all of it, there's no way to score the fact that people can work longer hours or work more, and what kind of productivity additions this will add. And of course, the number of money that people who have educated jobs makes versus people in uneducated positions, especially when it comes to community colleges, a breakwater for getting into university. That's you can't chart that. But I'm sure his biggest concern is that the Build Back Better plan adds to the deficit $300 billion. I get, that's why he was so concerned with the quality of the work that Trump did.
Don't believe the lies and misrepresentation is 1.7 trillion, because the way that they're doing the duration of these programs, programmatically, they're going to get everything in there, and that means the
programmatically. Yeah, those are people are programmer.
Be virtually impossible to dig out. This is a fundamental transformation of not just the American economy; it's a fundamental transformation of the citizens' relationship to the state, and they make it.
Well, one would say that the cell phone, much less the smartphone, was a fundamental transformation of the concept of non-material communication. Email, one would say, was a fundamental transformation. The internet is a fundamental transformation of the way we do business in this country and indeed the world. It changed the fundamentals to the point where even the money that largely changes hands is digital and has expanded into the existence of cryptocurrencies. And I bring that up because that's how Steve Bannon gets paid under the table by Russian oligarchs, creeps, and criminals, allegedly.
That all this stuff is, 70% approval. Yeah, but they don't define what exactly that is. They just kind of give this kind of high concept of free this and free that. And of course, people.
No, you say free this and free that. The bill actually has stuff in it. And when they poll people on it, they go, what do you think of this program? What do you think of this program? What do you think it would be worth to have this in the country versus what it costs?
I'm going to say when they hear that, yeah, sure, I'll take some free stuff. I like that. That's not what it's about. They also cover this. Remember,
Yes. That's mostly Republicans, by the way. Yeah, I'll take some free stuff. I love free stuff. That's the kind of answer you get when you poll Trump's family.
Say spending. They've test marketed that. They've what's called focus group. They focus group that, which is really put a bunch of people, average citizens, in a room and play some spots or throw out some words, and they focus grouped it. And the focus group says citizens don't like spending. They don't like government spending. They think that's not good because they understand they have to pay for it. But they like investments. They're told investments are good. And so if you say investments.
Well, there's a distinct difference between spending and investment. And as a matter of fact, the military has been the argument about military spending is about the security investment that you're actually making. And is the investment of that money making us more or less secure, even though it's for the same material shit? Is an ongoing war in Afghanistan, which is a part of military spending, is it an investment in the national security of the United States by needing a base there, needing some place to stop certain people from attacking the United States, or is it not? And that is the debate. And the reason there's a debate around that is because it's questionable whether some things are an investment or just spending. In the case of Afghanistan, it's abundantly clear for over 15 years it was just spending. Whereas when we give aid to Israel or Ukraine or some of the, you can argue that is an investment.
It's good. If you say spending, that's bad. So they just shift the nomenclature to say investments. It's all three-card money. This show.
Oh, I see. It's three-card money. By the way, why didn't Trump think about that? Didn't nobody? You need a focus group to tell you that people like the word investment. I'm sorry, Trump couldn't figure that shit out. Is that why he never got an infrastructure bill? Steve, is that why he could never fucking do it? Is that why he was a massive, massive failure on all fronts, especially infrastructure? You think Republicans just now started thinking, the ones that voted for it and the ones that support it, just started thinking of infrastructure as investment now because they heard a message from the Biden administration? Or do you think they've known it all along, but you and the fucking turd you used to run with couldn't get any of it done? Just didn't care to.
This is why this audience is so important, is we forced these moderate Democrats, 5 of them, there was actually more, but 5 of them actually went to Pelosi a couple of weeks ago and said, we can't pass this because you haven't done something that's actually required. You can get around.
Yeah, yes, by the way, yeah, Steve Bannon and his audience are the ones that got moderate Democrats to go, in my district, I can't vote for this unless you score it. I have to be able to defend this fucking thing, which is a reasonable thing. You have to weigh it against what it's actually going to accomplish. There's nothing wrong with them and any of them doing that. And she agreed. It does need to be scored. You do need to know how much something costs before you allocate money for the cost of said thing. But yeah, it's Steve Bannon's army, the shock troops, called 5 conservative, whatever the fuck that means, like read Democrats that would like to get reelected in a district they didn't just turn bluer than it already was.
If you're sneaky, and that is, you have not had this scored by
Welcome
the Congressional
back,
Budget Office. Now, what the Congressional Budget Office does, it's an independent agency over there. It takes all these complicated bills, breaks them down, and it really goes through what the true cost is and kind of.
Jesus Christ. We know. You know how we know? And you know how your listeners are fucking however they ingest this bullshit? You know how they know? Because you were against the Congressional Budget Office last year. Under Trump. Hey, there's 666 people have joined us. Welcome. Thank you. Perfect timing. I will take that as a sign from God that clearly we hit 666 people in the chat right as Steve Bannon's on screen. That's not a mistake. But if you feel like it, support the show with a $6.66 super chat, or any amount, really. It's very helpful. I clearly lost some subscribers this morning. Only a couple dozen, but they went away mad and will probably be shit talking me in other chat rooms for months and months and months for being right. Anyways,
what it's going to add to the deficit. Nancy Pelosi thinks so little of the American people. They were not going to do that. They haven't done. There's really been no due diligence done on these programs. Do you remember the hearing?
Also stupid. One of the reasons why the House hadn't done it yet was because the Senate has to work up their final version and then it has to go back. The Senate does that as well. A lot of times they'll do it before they even run it through committee. What's this version of the bill going to cost? The Senate does it. It's a they can do it or we can do it kind of a thing. It's not some big magical thing like, oh, she got strong-armed by some people. And after the Senate gets done with their changes, because the House votes for what they want, and then the Senate votes for what they can actually make happen, and then sends back to the House and see if they could stomach it, essentially, every time, which is why Trump never got any of his infrastructure shit off the ground, even when he controlled both houses. Because even he didn't know what the fuck he wanted.
On this, do you remember the analysis of this? Did they walk you through what the cost-benefit analysis is? No, they did not, because she doesn't have any respect for the American people. And this is the...
Well, if she doesn't have any respect for the American people, she would have said, fuck you, no way.
Rattle of a dying regime. All the numbers are horrific.
The death rattle of a dying regime. The death rattle of a... Hold on. There we go. Hold on.
Back today, Kamala Harris, and we're going to have the great Jack Posobiec, who really was on this story first. Kamala Harris either fired or her comms director departed, because as a poll came in, it showed Kamala Harris at 28%. You know, she's somewhere between 26 and 28, which are, these numbers are so historically low, they're almost incomprehensible of how even to ascertain them and compare them to numbers in the past.
Well, no, you can compare them to numbers in the past, especially on, national security related elements. Let's see. When's the last time somebody got us out of a long running war like Afghanistan, like Vietnam?
At Quinnipiac, the university comes out there, very good polling out.
Does Bannon listeners know he's a Leninist? I don't think so. I don't think that they realize he wants to be, a barely right-wing version of the Weather Underground.
But, on the left, they came out with handling the economy. Joe Biden, people, it took the great Steve Cortez to pull this out. The people that, the American people who think Biden's doing a great job in the economy, 16%. That's 1/6. Those are numbers that are almost within the margin of error. I mean, it's almost incomprehensible how low these numbers are. So Nancy Pelosi now is trying to find the votes. Now, here's what they're going to do. They're going to vote on something that people haven't even seen the bill. We've asked MTG and others. Tell us what the...
You've asked Marjorie Taylor Greene and others. They haven't seen the bill? They haven't seen it? They haven't seen it. No? They don't. They haven't seen the Build Back Better plan. They haven't seen it. The Build Back Better Act. There's only one version of it. There aren't multiple versions. Would that be? I mean, they could. Do they not have internet? Or, I mean, they have staff. They could go through, like I have multiple times. They haven't seen it. They don't know what's in it. Steve, Marjorie Taylor Greene can't. She doesn't know what's in the bill. She doesn't know that, like, say there's USDA assistance and support for underserved farmers, ranchers, and foresters. Forgiveness of $150,000 worth of debt for each one of them. She doesn't know that's in there. She doesn't know. Let's see. Let's just do a needle drop. Support for farm worker and food worker relief grants. There you go. Let's see. Let's scroll way down. Let's see. Come on. Let's get going. It's like Price is Right. It's a big bill. There's a lot of stuff in it. It should be big. Oh, look at that. There's literally line markers on it so that you can address line by line in committee what part of the paragraph you're talking about. You sure she hasn't seen this? Steve, you sure? Sure nobody's seen this? Grants, localities, and awards to Head Start programs, and what you have to do to qualify for them. Let's see. What's another? Let's we scroll past something. Universal preschool. I mean, this is one of the things we've talked about right there. Child experiencing homelessness. The term child experiencing homelessness means an individual who is homeless, a child or youth under the section of 725 of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. Child with disability, comprehensive services, what they mean by that, because you have to set the terms in a law as you present it. Probably eligible child. She probably stopped reading at the word eligible child. Yeah. That'll make MTG stop reading. Head Start agency. The term Head Start agency means an entity designated as a Head Start agency under Section 641 of the Head Start. So, it's been, Indian tribes are described. Local education agencies. The poverty line is in the community services block grant definition of it, which is it basically is like these are like plug-in elements of a math problem, right? Secretary of the term. So there you go. You go through this. Here we go. What does it mean? Appropriations for the states. Here it is. Steve, you've heard about free stuff. Free stuff. Right, Steve? That's all they know is free stuff. That's all she knows. She can't possibly go to section 229 of the bill herself, or page 229 of the bill herself, and look at, in general, addition to the amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated for the Department of Health and Human Services for fiscal year 2022 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, $4 billion to remain available until September 30th, 2027 for payments to states carrying out this section. $6 billion to remain available until September 2027 for paying for these things. $8 billion to remain available until September 30, 2027. Additional appropriations appropriations where they're going. $2 billion, $5 to remain available until this is how they strategize it out over the next 10 years budget wise. The money that's actually going there, but to pay for it. Carry out federal activities, support the activities funded under this section, including administration, as we wrote through there. $216 million to remain available for carrying out federal activities, support activities in here. To remain available until this area. This is how they word all these things out. And then the spending of it will be payments to states. Amounts available under the subsection for any fiscal years 2022 to 2024. The Secretary is going to pay out. This is the proportion amount of the thing. See, this is in the bill here. State activities. The Secretary shall pay to each state with an approved state plan under paragraph 5 an amount of the fiscal year equal to 43.022% of this amount of the state's expenditures for the activities described in paragraph 3, except that in no case shall a payment for a fiscal year under this clause exceed the amount equal to 10% of the state's expenditures described in clause 10 for the fiscal year. The non-federal share, this is the paying of the other schools, how they allocate it out. This is the payment part of it. Nothing in this will make a new law that goes against the previous law, and that's where that stuff is. Partner in the Head Start agencies, ensure they distribute new preschool slots equitably among childcare, including family childcare providers, Head Start agencies, and schools within the state. Certification that the state in operating the program described in this section for the fiscal will not reduce the total preschool slots provided in state-funded preschool programs from the number of such slots of the previous year. So you can't just start spending more money on kids by kicking kids out. The number of eligible children identified in the state declines from the previous year will maintain at least the previous year's ratio of the total preschool slots described in clause to eligible children so identified. And assurance that the state will use funding provided under the section to ensure children with disabilities have access to and participate in inclusive preschool programs consistent with provisions in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and a description of how the state will collaborate. It's all here, Steve. Booby. Nobody knows what's in it. Just free stuff. Now, in his defense, he was bringing up Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she can't read.
So we don't know. They haven't circulated it. This will be...
They haven't circulated it? No? They haven't circulated it? What, do they have a drum circle?
Thousands of pages long, and if you've ever seen one of these bills, they're enormously complicated. It's basically a contract. Everything's referenced to another part of the Federal Register. This is not just some sort of for your reading pleasure.
Yeah, and it's weird how everybody else manages to look at it except Republicans. They go, that thing's fucking huge.
These are highly technical, thousands of pages long, each one to have implications to it. Now,
that's why they all go through committee, fucko.
National Budget Office, what we understand is this the other way, a little bit of inside baseball of what they're trying to do to gun deck this. In other words, gun deck's a Navy term to say basically to do something
to gun deck it. Yeah, they're gonna shoot the decks on this. Tell me what gun decking means?
In other words,
macho asshole.
The Navy term to say basically to do something untoward to kind of fool you. Okay, gun deck's when you drop the rifle on the deck and you shouldn't hit it that hard. It's a mistake. They're gun decking.
What? They're what do you mean? They're dropping the bill on the deck to pretend that it's broken so they don't have to fire it? The fuck?
And what they're doing is they're not having the interconnectivity of the budget. Remember, for $1.7 trillion or $3.5 trillion, these are numbers of scales that people heretofore had not even talked about but couldn't even comprehend of the scale.
Hey, fucko. You want to comprehend this scale? You want to comprehend this scale? Let's see. U.S. economy in trillions. We have a GDP of $22.675 trillion. Nobody's even comprehended that. We're taking $1.7 trillion over 10 years off the 20% or so of this that is taxed and directing it towards schooling and food and disability assistance for people. This isn't fucking communism. This is normal. This is a service base. It's the same thing with infrastructure. Now, the ultimate worth, let's see, 36 more rows. Let's see, the total, let's see, I'll try to find this in here. Yeah, there you go. Nobody's even, no, guys, nobody even thinks about these, evolution of GDP in 2000. This is like, you play this out. This is, and you watch this, and China's switching with everybody, and look how fast they're growing, and look how close they're getting. This is going to take a giant shit. You can just, first of all, from this line to this line is bullshit. It's fart air, feng pi, it's garbage. It doesn't exist. It's all for show. It's shuck and drive. It's baloney. It's nonsense. It doesn't exist. It's money on paper and no root worth underneath it. Get used to it. This is and then this chunk and this chunk are going to drop like crazy as everybody else tries to fight in there. Now, here's the United States. We have 340 million people in it, and allegedly China has 1.1 billion. You guys know how I feel about that. I think it's closer to 600, 700 million. Maybe even less. India definitely has 1.1 billion people in it, and look at theirs. $3.7 trillion for GDP. Do you have any idea how rich our country is compared to other countries? It's not even fucking close. That's right, feng pi. Butt air, butt wind. And this is all snow. That's where it's going to be in 2024. And everybody says they're going to catch up. They are absolutely not. They're going to isolate themselves. And like I said, there's billions of dollars in this leveraged upon not garbage. Yeah. Japan, world's third largest. There's India is number 5. These are the world's largest economies. Not even close. We are not China's BS numbers notwithstanding, which is, trust me, nonsense. We have 5 times the economy of these other countries. And you're saying we can't school, have preschool for citizens of the United States? Kids in a country of 340 million people? Look at this. It's embarrassing. Numbers no one's even comprehended. Go fuck yourself. Everybody in business comprehends money in the trillions all the fucking time. The reason we've never done this before where we talked in terms of trillions is because people didn't even know we had a 12 or an $8 trillion economy when everybody else was smaller 15 fucking years ago. This is just embarrassing. How do They just assume nobody gives a shit.
The commitment of these to the American people. So you have the Congressional Budget Office, they do these verticals of like if it's in child care, if it's in pre-K, if it's in free community college, take whatever it is, what the bill is going to ascertain resources and spending for. But then they come back, they look at what's the impact in that vertical, but then they come back and tie it together. That's called the interconnectivity or the interactivity. It's got a couple of phrases, but it's kind of dynamic.
Yeah, he doesn't know any of the phrases, so he'll just pick one and say they call it a lot of things.
And it's not dynamic scoring. That's different. That talks about what the economy will do overall.
By the way, can we just enjoy the fact that Steve Bannon's still in legal deep shit, is going to end up probably doing a couple of days in jail between now and when he actually testifies, and they're going to get all of his devices, and he's dicking around, arguing. Think about what his show is normally about. What do we normally watch on this guy's show? That it's a fucking Marxist takeover of the whole thing, and that they're CRTing kids, and there's going to be a revolution and shock troops and blah, blah, like all this flowery asshole macho language. And now he's like, when the Congressional Budget Office brings back a final, it's not quite a final score. They always have to link it up to like boring the fuck out of everyone. This is fantastic.
Economy can either decrease or increase. Right now, Biden is so freaked out. They're so shocked and worried about inflation because inflation is one of the cruelest taxes. It's crushing the working class. It's crushing the middle class. That they're presenting this instead of the bank.
It's crushing. It's crushing the working class. It's crushing the middle class. It's crushing. Everyone is crushed, and the crushed U.S. retail says strong sales growth implies earlier. U.S. retail sales surge as Americans kick off holiday shopping. Inflation is hiding within retail sales spikes, meaning that the consumer is absorbing it with extra money that they have. The rest of the world isn't. The American consumer is. Hammering, crushing, destruction. Destroyed and crushed and crushing. In October, they went up 1.7%. Core retail sales at 1.6%. Manufacturing production rebounds 1.2%. None of this is going to fucking matter in 3 months, Steve. None of it. And again, this time next year, the argument will be, dear God, we have deflation. People, their salaries have gone up, but we're getting cheap overseas goods, and the rest of the world hasn't caught up. They haven't raised their prices yet. Yeah.
See, Bill, because this will bankrupt the United States. They're tying this. They're saying this.
Sorry, what? The bill that pays for itself, but for $384 billion, which they think they can bring down by $270 billion with proper tax enforcement. That's going to bankrupt the United States. It's going to bankrupt, Steve, it's going to bankrupt the United States. $384 billion in overtures in a bill that brings everyone universal pre-K, 2 years of free community college. If they want it, they don't have to go. An entire infrastructure plan that's going to rebuild bridges, roads, train lines, electric car grid, all this other shit that's going to fix a bunch of climate change stuff. It only goes over $338 billion in the overall budget for a fucking decade, is going to bankrupt the United States. For fuck's sake. Again, that's what I said. Like, this is their job, is to shit talk the United States of America. That's what he does.
Be an inflation killer. This is actually going to kill inflation. They're making the argument, which they haven't made before because they think you're idiots. Since inflation is on everybody's mind, they're going to sit there and go, no, by having these investments, we're actually going to put costs down, and that's going to lead to lower inflation.
And by the way, by they, he means Moody's, Goldman Sachs, and other Wall Street firms who have said that the Build Back Better plan and the infrastructure bill will put a downward pressure on inflation. because of the amount of resources it takes in and the type of jobs it creates, that it will kind of tap that down. It'll also open up ports and other shit, and you'll have better import export. It'll fix a lot of the holes in our import export world in the supply chain.
Nonsense. I mean, it's laughable. You don't see any real economists. You see the phonies up on
the phonies up on what? Wait, do you think
NBC and really the partisans on these other channels that are there?
Sorry,
I mean, it's laughable. You don't see any real economists. You see the phonies up on MSNBC and really the partisans on these other channels that are there that are pushing this. So we know that inflation is the thing that's got Biden scared to death. You look at the front page of
the Financial Times.
The Financial Times today. You know, Biden's been begging people like Japan and China. You know, he's releasing fuel. I think 2.3 million barrels of out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve we have. He's been begging China and Japan to do the same. Headline: Biden urges probe of potentially illegal conduct by energy majors. Trying to get what the energy majors.
And by the way, this is Steve Bannon coming to the defense of Chevron, Exxon, and all these oil companies, because it's really them and the Saudis and the Russians cranking down production to try and drive the price up that's causing the jack up at the pump, because nobody went anywhere last year, so they're trying to make up for that lost revenue.
Although Biden's tried to kill the energy industry under President Trump, we were full spectrum energy dominant. He's trying to do it. Of course, the subheadline:
full spectrum energy dominant. Were we now? Oh, right up until he let COVID run rampant and we couldn't fucking go anywhere. And all of his energy policies were contributing to the recession that started in February of 2020 that was hidden under the abject failure of COVID. So it's always good when you can cover a minor fuck up with a gigantic one.
Analysts deride as political stunt. You have this regime, the death rattle of this regime, and you can see the death rattle of it because of the polling.
Say death rattle again. Say that no one thinks when you say death rattle that you haven't just spoken to your skin doctor.
This is a collapse of historic proportions on every poll across the board in every demographic. You have a complete and total implosion of this illegitimate Biden regime. But they're doing two things simultaneously. Number one, with no mandate. And they have no mandate.
This is what he said on the other show, too. Yeah, they do. 8 million extra votes in the popular vote, and, of course, 306.
Like FDR had in 32 or LBJ had in 64. These kind of over, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100-seat majorities in the House coming off the financial crisis in the Great Depression in 1932, and, of course, the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963, where...
Yeah. I know it's going to be hard to get kind of like, political sympathies without having your leader assassinated or without the Great Depression. What?
Lyndon Johnson won the sweeping victory against Barry Goldwater and brought massive majorities to the House and the Senate.
Yeah, because, Goldwater was a magical candidate. Ask Stephanie Miller.
There they had mandates and used those mandates for the New Deal and then for the Great Society. Here with no mandates, basically losing House seats in the big steal, losing House seats in 2020, losing House seats. I think it was 14 House seats. I think it netted out to 12, a net 12 House seats.
And yet still controlling. They lost some and still have control.
Losing House seats.
Winning the Senate.
And being tied in the Senate, with only a handful of seats in the House given a majority, and many of these I should say moderate Democrats in swing districts that Trump will win in 2022 and 2024.
Yes, he's going to run both times. He's going to run for Congress. He's running for Matt Gaetz' seat. He's going to run for Speaker of the House and lose, actually, to Liz Cheney, I hear.
They're going into a plan that's actually more radical than the New Deal and the Great Society combined. I mean, this is transformational, and they're trying to do it in the dead of night. They haven't had any...
No, they were going to do it in the dead of night, and then Kevin McCarthy talked all night, and they did it in the morning.
Meetings on these bills. They haven't had any hearings on these bills. They haven't gone through the technical details of these bills.
Yeah, they have. The infrastructure bill is a lot of stuff that's been sitting around for years. It's not a mystery. We know which bridges are broken. We know which areas don't have broadband. They've been through committees dozens of times. They just went back through and changed the cost because waiting makes it worse.
All you do is get numbers. Now they're trying to spin it and trying to sell it. Biden's popularity, his polling is dropping. I think he's dropped 5 points even from the time they got the infrastructure bill signed. He's in a complete and total collapse. And what's the regime doing? They're doing a rearguard action on trying to try to get this spending in there, thinking they can buy off.
Rear guard action. I thought they were machine gunning the deck as they, is this signal or noise? And insert macho phrase.
The working class and the poor in this country.
I keep thinking that, and that's the end of it. Steve, I did freeze that. That's the last frame of their video. I was so overwhelmed by how I was hoping the ice would make my coffee more palatable.
Try to get this spending in there, thinking they can buy off the working class and the poor in this country.
That's it. And apparently, whatever thought he had after that, according to Steve Bannon's people, that was a waste of time. Dems are lying about inflation. Biden is scared to death. Well, he's getting a colonoscopy. It's got to be a weird feeling, you know. I don't think he's scared of it, though. I think he's had one before.